Welcome back to the deep dive. I hope you're comfortable. Pull up a chair, maybe throw another log on the fire,
Yeah.
metaphorically speaking, of course, unless you are actually listening to us by a campfire, in which case you are winning at life right now. And honestly, that vibe, the crackling wood, the darkness around you, the stars overhead, that is exactly the headspace we need to be in for tonight.
It really is. We are venturing into territory that
Mm.
feels very nocturnal. It's the kind of conversation you have at 2 in the morning when the world gets quiet and the normal rules of reality start to feel a little thin.
Thin is the right word. We're going to poke some holes in the curtain tonight. We are diving into session 131 of the early sessions, book 3 of the Seth material.
Recorded way back on February 10th, 1965.
Now, before we get our minds thoroughly blown, and I promise you, we have to do the housekeeping. This podcast is distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes. We aren't charging admission to the universe tonight.
And, a quick disclaimer on the content. Our goal here is exploration. We are looking at the concepts presented in this specific session. We aren't endorsing them as absolute scientific fact or telling you what to believe. We are reporting on a fascinating, complex perspective on consciousness and the nature of reality. We're just unpacking the text to see what's inside.
So let's unpack this, because the hook for tonight is wild. We all know electricity, right? It's the stuff that powers the mic I'm speaking into. It lights up your toaster. It charges your phone. We think we know what it is. Electrons flowing through a wire.
It's
Physics 101.
standard model physics.
Yeah. But what if I told you that, according to this material, the electricity we know, the stuff that runs our entire civilization, is basically just a shadow?
A low-resolution echo. A byproduct.
Right. And what if your those weird movies that play in your head at night where you're suddenly back in high school but you haven't studied for the math test? What if those aren't just firing neurons? What if they have mass, like actual electrical weight, and location?
That is the core of tonight's deep dive. We are talking about the electrical reality. Seth posits that thoughts, dreams, and even the ego itself are built from a dense electrical code that never disappears. It's a view of the universe where nothing is ever deleted.
The ultimate cloud storage, but for your soul. I love that image, but it's also kind of terrifying. It means my awkward teenage years are preserved forever in high-definition electrical code.
Unfortunately, yes, along with everything else.
Okay, let's set the scene before we get into the heavy physics or metaphysics, I guess. It's 1965. Jane Roberts is the medium. She's in Elmira, New York. It's 9 p.m. on a Wednesday. What is the vibe in the room? Because usually these sessions are pretty structured, right?
They are, but the atmosphere tonight is described as intense. Jane is described as being dissociated. When she speaks as Seth, her voice is slow, very paused. She's not just rattling this off like a lecture. It's like she's listening to something very distant or perhaps very heavy and translating it in real time.
And there's this weird physical sensation that she and her husband, Rob, both experience. And honestly, when I read this in the notes, it made me laugh a little. It's such a weirdly specific detail. They call it the fat hands phenomenon.
It does sound funny out of context. Fat hands.
Rob notes that his right hand felt fat or enlarged, and Jane felt it too. I'm picturing them sitting there trying to be serious about the secrets of the universe, but feeling like they're wearing those giant foam fingers you see at a sports game. We're number one.
It's a ridiculous image, I grant you. But stick with that sensation for a second. Imagine you are holding a coffee cup. You look down, your hand looks normal, it's the same size it's always been. But your sensory input, the internal map of your body, is telling you that your hand is the size of a catcher's mitt.
That would be incredibly disorienting. It's a disconnect between what you see and what you feel.
Exactly. And Seth jumps on this immediately. He says, this isn't a cramp, it isn't a circulation issue, it's not physical in the way we usually think.
So what is it? Is it a hallucination?
Seth calls it a symptom of psychological expansion. Think about it this way. We spend our whole lives convinced that we end where our skin ends. My reality stops at my fingertips. That is the border of me.
Right. Me is inside the skin bag. Everything else is not me.
Correct. But Seth argues that the inner self, that the real core of your consciousness, doesn't have those borders. It's huge. It's electrical. It connects everything. When Jane and Rob start channeling this intense energy, that inner self starts to bleed through into their physical awareness.
So the fat hand is the physical body getting confused by the sheer size of the soul.
That is a beautiful way to put it. The physical nervous system is trying to interpret a non-physical expansion. It translates I am becoming part of the universe into my hand feels really big. It's a sensory translation error.
That actually makes sense. The brain is just a machine trying to interpret data. If the data says you are massive, the brain goes, okay, I guess my hand is swollen.
Precisely. Jane also mentioned feeling filled and light, with a sensation of inner projection. It's like ballooning out. It's such a tactile detail. It really grounds the spooky stuff in physical experience.
And speaking of grounding, we have to mention Jane's pre-session notes. Before the profound universal truths drop, she's getting psychic impressions about a guy named Fred Anderson refusing to pay a fee.
I love these details. Fred isn't going to pay the cover charge.
It's so mundane. It's like, here are the secrets of the cosmos, but first, tell Fred he's cheap.
It was a message about an affair, a fee involved, and Fred deciding to go but not pay. But notice the contrast. You have the mundane details of daily life unpaid fees, social affairs, right alongside this massive biblical-sounding pronouncement she gets later. Our ways are not your ways.
Our ways are not your ways. That sounds a bit more ominous, or at least very Old Testament.
It sets the stage. It reminds us that this session is a bridge. It's bridging the ego's daily grind, the money, the relationships, with a massive electrical universe that operates on completely different rules.
So, the fat hands were just the warm-up. The bandwidth is opening up. Seth starts talking about the ego. Now, usually when we hear ego, we think Freud, or we think of someone who's just full of themselves. Oh, he has a big ego. But Seth is using it differently here, right?
Very differently. He's not talking about arrogance. He's talking about the I that you identify with, the part of you that navigates the physical world, the part of you that pays taxes and worries about Fred Anderson.
Okay, but here is where I get stuck. Seth claims the ego isn't just a software program running in your brain. He says it has an electrical reality.
Yes.
Wait, hold on. Neuroscience tells us memories are synaptic connections. The self is just a pattern of firing neurons. If the brain dies, the pattern stops. Are you saying Seth contradicts that, or is he adding a layer we can't see?
He's adding a foundational layer. He acknowledges the psychological aspect, sure, but he insists that thoughts aren't just smoke or ephemeral patterns. He says the ego is composed of actual electrical impulses that have a specific structure.
Structure implies it takes up space.
Not physical space, but electrical space. He says the ego is sparked into being by the inner self. Think of the inner self like a massive power grid. The ego is a specific transformer plugged into that grid to handle physical reality.
Okay, I follow the transformer analogy. It steps the energy down so we don't blow a fuse.
Exactly. But as that transformer, the ego lives your life, it gathers data. Every memory, every trauma, every triumph. Seth says this isn't just stored in your brain neurons as a chemical trace. He says it forms a coded electrical reality within the cells themselves.
So if I could look at my cells with a Seth microscope, I wouldn't just see DNA. I'd see what?
You would see an electrical structure that represents you. He says at any given point, the ego is as complete within electrical reality as it is psychologically complete within the physical universe. It's a permanent recording.
That makes the body sound less like a biological machine and more like a hard drive.
A hard drive that writes itself. Coded experience. The material of your cells actually forms around this data.
But then he drops this bomb about electricity itself. And this is the part that makes you look at your desk lamp differently. He says the electricity we use, the stuff our scientists study, is a shadow image.
This is the quote that really stuck with me. Electricity as you perceive it within your field is merely an echo emanation, or a sort of shadow image of these infinite varieties of pulsations.
Infinite varieties of pulsations. That sounds poetic, but let's be real. What does it actually mean? Because if I plug my toaster in, the toast pops up, the electricity works, we have cars that run on it. If it's just a shadow, why does it work?
It works because the shadow follows the rules of the object casting it. But it's limited. Let's use the Plato's cave analogy, but modernize it. Imagine a 3D object, like a complex spinning gyroscope, passing through a 2D plane.
Like a flatland situation.
Right. If you live in 2D, you just see a slice of that gyroscope. You see a circle that grows and shrinks. You can measure the circle. You can predict the circle. You can build a circle engine.
But I'll never understand that it's actually a gyroscope.
Precisely. Seth says our scientists are masters of the circle. They measure the voltage, the amperage, the resistance. They are measuring the projection of the electricity into our physical world.
But they are missing the gyroscope.
They are missing the source. Seth says the true electrical reality is vastly dense. It holds dimensions of data, emotion, memory, consciousness that our physical instruments just filter out. We are running our civilization on the echo of the real power.
So when scientists get better instruments, they aren't necessarily going to find the source. They're just going to find a higher resolution shadow.
That's exactly what Seth warns about. He says, as instruments improve, we will see more anomalies. We will see things that don't fit our laws of physics because our laws describe the shadow, not the object. We're seeing effects, not causes.
That connects to something Jane saw during a pause in the session. She had this vision. She's sitting there, trance-paused, and she sees a galaxy of lights.
This is a crucial visual for understanding what Seth means by density. She describes a field of points of light, many-layered. She explicitly says it looked like a galaxy that wasn't flat.
It's a depth.
Extreme depth.
Yeah.
But Seth jumps in to correct our thinking here. When we hear dense, we think of a rock or lead, something heavy that takes up space.
Right. If I pack a suitcase too full, it's dense, it's hard to close.
Seth says, no. This electrical reality doesn't take up space in the way we understand it. It is a density of intensities.
That's a bit abstract. Help me visualize that.
Imagine a radio. In this room right now, you have Wi-Fi signals, you have AM radio, you have FM radio, you have police scanners, you have cell phone data 4G, 5G.
And they are all occupying the same physical space.
Correct. They are dense in this room, but they don't bump into each other. Why?
Because they're on different frequencies.
Exactly. Now imagine that layering isn't just 10 or 20 signals. Imagine it is infinite. An infinite number of electrical fields occupying the same space, but separated by intensity.
So the universe isn't empty space with some rocks floating in it. It's a solid block of frequencies.
In a way, yes. And here's the part that gives me chills. Seth says this field contains the coded data of endless eons.
The archives.
Yes. He says it contains a past, present, and future of unnumbered universes.
Unnumbered universes, not just ours.
Every consciousness that has ever existed or will exist is stored in this electrical field.
That is heavy. It makes you realize how small our little physical reality slice is.
He says, the actuality of what I call the past has not gone out of existence, and the future exists in actuality in the past.
So nothing is ever deleted. If I had an embarrassing moment in 3rd grade, that electrical pattern still exists in the universe?
It does. But so does your greatest triumph. And so does the moment you haven't lived yet. It's all there. It's a library where the books are never thrown away, and the books that haven't been written yet are already on the shelves.
That's both comforting and terrifying. It's comforting because immortality, in a way, we are recorded forever. But terrifying because, well, I don't know if I want everything recorded.
Seth calls it the living reality of endless eons. It's not a dead archive. It's alive. It's pulsating.
Okay, speaking of pulsating and living, let's talk about dreams, because this is where the theory hits the pillow. Seth has a beef with how we view dreams, doesn't he?
He does. He implies that scientists consider the study of dreams beneath them, which in 1965 was largely true outside of psychoanalysis. Hard sciences didn't touch it. But Seth isn't talking about interpreting symbols. He's talking about the physics of dreams.
He asks this question. Why has no one suspected that dream locations, for example, have not only a psychological reality, but a definite actuality?
He's saying dream locations are real places.
Okay, stop. Real places. So when I dream I'm in a weird version of my high school, but the lockers are made of chocolate, that place exists.
It exists within the electrical reality. It doesn't take up physical space. You can't drive a car there. But it has electrical mass and intensity. It is built of the same stuff the universe is built of, just at a different frequency.
But it feels so flimsy when I wake up. It fades.
That's your memory fading as you switch back to the physical frequency.
Right.
But while you were there, it was real.
He mentioned something really interesting about energy here, the free energy concept. And this is where my inner skeptic starts raising its hand.
Go on.
Well, the first law of thermodynamics. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It's a closed system. You can't get something for nothing.
Right.
But Seth points out a contradiction in our experience. In a dream, you can run, you can fight, you can build a house. You are doing definite work. Physics definition of work. Force times distance.
You're expending energy.
But when you wake up, your physical legs aren't tired. In fact, you are usually rested. You feel recharged.
So where did the energy come from? If I ran a marathon in the dream, I did the work, but I didn't burn the physical calories. In fact, I gained energy.
If that happened in a physical machine, we'd call it a perpetual motion machine. We'd say it's impossible.
Exactly. Seth says this challenges our laws of physics because our laws assume a closed system. He implies the inner self has access to energy sources outside the physical system. You're using electrical mass, not physical mass. You are powered by a different battery.
It's like switching from the gas engine to the electric motor in a hybrid car.
And that electric motor is tapped into the universal grid. He's suggesting that the universe is an open system, constantly fed by this inner electrical reality.
So dreams aren't just all in your head. In a fake sense, they are in your head in the sense that your head is a receiver for this massive electrical reality.
Precisely. And this leads us to the mechanism of how we move through this reality. Because if dreams are real places, how do we get there?
Seth says nothing is static, everything moves and changes, but motion isn't walking.
Right. In this electrical universe, motion is psychological. To move is to change intensities.
We're back to the radio dial.
Yes. If you are a consciousness and you want to go somewhere, you don't move your legs. You shift your frequency. You tune yourself to a different station.
And this explains time travel, because this was the part of the transcript where I had to put the paper down and just stare at the wall for a minute.
It is the definition of time in the electrical universe.
Okay, break this down for me. Past and future. How does a radio dial explain time travel?
Okay. Imagine the dial. You are currently tuned to 101.5 FM. That's the present. That's where your ego is focused.
Okay, I'm rocking out to 101.5.
Now, if the inner self shifts its intensity to a range it has already experienced, say 98.7 FM, the ego perceives that as a journey into the past.
So memory isn't just looking at a photo album, it's retuning the radio.
In a vivid sense, yes. When you vividly remember something, you are actually shifting your frequency slightly back to that electrical pattern.
But here's the kicker.
The kicker is the other direction. If the inner self shifts to an intensity it hasn't experienced yet, say 105.9 FM, the ego perceives that as the future.
But both stations are broadcasting at the same time.
Exactly. 98.7 and 105.9 are both on the air right now. Seth says, in actuality, of course, both impulses exist simultaneously.
The inner self knows this. It sees the whole radio dial. It can hear all the songs at once. But the ego is stuck listening to one song at a time.
The ego is linear. It experiences the slide across the dial as time passing. It thinks it takes time to get from 98.7 to 105.9, but the electrical reality is the whole dashboard at once.
This redefines astral travel, too. I always picture astral travel as a ghost floating out of a body and flying over the rooftops, like Peter Pan or Doctor Strange.
Seth corrects that view. It's not about flying through space. He says, here is a clue for so-called astral travel. It's about the inner self having limitless intensities available.
So you aren't going out. You're going in behind ways.
You are shifting your calibration. You are tuning into a different pulsation. You don't leave your body so much as you switch the channel of your reality. The flying sensation might just be the ego's way of interpreting that shift in frequency.
That makes so much more sense than the ghost theory. It's more like a dimensional shift. It explains why astral projection experiences often feel so dreamlike or fluid.
And it connects back to the density. Because the space is dense with these options, you don't have to travel far to find a whole new world. It's right next to you, just at a different pitch.
Speaking of pitch, we need to talk about the musical analogy because honestly, I feel like we breezed past it in the intro, but this was the most humbling part of the session for me.
The scale of reality.
Yeah. Seth talks about our physical world, this whole thing we think is everything. The Earth, the sun, the galaxies we see with telescopes, the billions of years of history. He says our field is a tiny band of electrical impulses.
1,000,000 times smaller than any one note picked at random from the entire mass of musical composition.
One note. One single note. We are living in one note of a cosmic symphony that is endless.
It is a staggering perspective. We are obsessed with our physical universe, thinking it's the whole song. We argue about politics, we fight wars, we stress about fees, all inside one single beep in an infinite opera.
It makes you feel incredibly small. Like, does any of this matter if we are just a microscopic fraction of a note?
But then he flips it. And this is the genius of the Seth material. Just when you feel insignificant, he brings it back to the individual.
Uniqueness brings its own responsibility.
That's the quote.
Yeah.
He emphasizes that no two of these electrical fields are identical, and there are no identical impulses within them.
So my thoughts, my specific, weird, anxious, happy thoughts are unique.
Completely unique. Seth says each of your own thoughts is composed of a unique intensity of impulse, shared by nothing else.
That's wild. So I'm creating a frequency that has never existed before.
Yes. And the same for every dream you have.
Yeah.
You are generating a unique code.
So even though we are just one note, the quality or the timbre of that note depends on us.
Exactly. We're adding something to the electrical universe that nothing else can add. If you weren't here, That specific frequency would be missing from the archives. The symphony would be incomplete.
That is a heavy responsibility. Uniqueness brings its own responsibility. It means we aren't just consumers of reality, we are producers. We are writing the code.
We are generating the data that fills the archives of eternity. It transforms your life from a passive experience into an active contribution to the cosmos.
Okay, so we have this massive electrical universe. We have the ability to time travel by shifting intensity. We have dreams that are real places. It sounds overwhelming.
And dangerous.
It can be disorienting.
How do we not get lost? If I start tuning the dial, how do I make sure I can get back to 1 and 1.5 FM? How do I make sure I wake up in my own bed and not in the dream version of the chocolate high school?
That is a very practical concern. And Seth addresses it. He talks about the need for a safety net.
He recommends disciplined experiments, specifically psychological time.
We've touched on psychological time, or psi time, in other deep dives. It's essentially a meditative state where you tune out the physical senses to focus inward. It's the practice of shifting that dial deliberately.
But here explains why it works as a safety net. He uses this great analogy of a psychic footpath.
He says, your psychic footpath is then composed of stones laid out in some order that can lead you both away from the ego and back to it safely.
It's Hansel and Gretel. You're leaving breadcrumbs in the electrical forest.
In a way, yes. By practicing these shifts in consciousness in a disciplined, repetitive way, you are creating familiar ground. You are building a bridge between the ego and the inner self.
Grounds of reference and even of safety. So if you just spontaneously blast off into a new intensity, you might panic. You might not know how to tune back. But if you lay the stones down,
you train the ego. You show the ego, look, we can go here and we can come back. It makes the manipulation of the electrical universe safer.
It's like training for a deep sea dive. You don't just jump to the bottom of the ocean. You practice breath holding. You get used to the pressure. You use a guideline.
Exactly. And Seth is very big on not frightening the ego. The ego is necessary for physical life. It's the transformer, remember. You don't want to blow it up. You want to expand its capacity. You want to teach it that it has fat hands, that it's bigger than it thinks it is, without freaking it out.
This really ties everything together. The fat hands sensation was the physical symptom of that expansion. The galaxy of lights was the visual representation of where we go. And the psychic footpath is the method of travel.
It's a complete system. It connects the physical body, the psychological mind, and the universal structure. It turns the weirdness of the session into a map.
So what does this all mean for us right now on a Tuesday in 2026? Why should we care about electrical density?
It means we need to reconsider what we think is real. We tend to dismiss thoughts and dreams as ephemeral, fleeting things, ghostly vapors that don't matter. Seth is telling us they are the most real things. They are the bedrock. They are the electrical code that outlasts the physical body.
And it means that the future isn't something we are waiting for. It's something that's already broadcasting and we just haven't tuned in yet.
And that we have the capacity, the hardware, so to speak, to access it if we are brave enough to touch the dial.
I love that. It makes the world feel so much bigger. And also, it makes me feel like I should pay more attention to my dreams. I'm not just sleeping. I'm commuting to an electrical job site.
And doing work.
And doing work, I expect to be paid in electrical credits.
I think the currency is experience. And you get to keep it forever.
Fair enough. Well, we have covered a lot of ground, or should I say a lot of intensities tonight. From the fat hands of 1965 to the density of intensities that holds the universe together.
It's a dense session, pun intended.
Always intended. We want to remind you that this deep dive was based on the Seth material, specifically session 131.
We strongly encourage you to study the original books. There is nothing like reading it in the original context. We are just scratching the surface here. Credit to the publisher, New Awareness Network.
You can find these texts and dive even deeper yourself. Visit the New Awareness Network website and bookstore at sethcenter.com/the-early-sessions. Seriously, go check it out.
It's a library of the archives.
Before we sign off, I want to leave you with a thought, a provocative one.
Let's hear it.
If dreams have actual electrical mass and reality, as Seth claims, and if they are actual locations, then the people you meet in them, are they just figments of your imagination? Or are they visitors from another intensity?
And if the future already exists in the electrical archives, have you already lived it?
Something to think about tonight when you close your eyes and shift your intensity.
Just remember to leave a few stones on the path so you can find your way back.
See you in the next deep dive.